Hey guys, welcome to Now Less Debatable. This is your host, Fantastic Facade. I am joined with my trusty co-host, Triple A the Humanist, and we have Liam back. And gonna need to do some audio testing because I had to make a bunch of audio changes and updates to my computer, but we should be good, hopefully. And we'll give that a test. So, how is everybody doing while I do some audio tests and you guys greet and introduce each other?
I'm chilling, man. How
Am
you live? We already
I good?
said hi before we were live, but this is for people who hadn't heard us say hi yet.
Good test, eh?
Yeah,
Am I coming through okay?
cool, man. Yeah, thanks for coming on. This is like your fifth or fourth show.
I think it's the fourth.
Fourth
I'm
one.
not sure.
Okay, cool, man.
I'm
Yeah, man.
not, I'd have to go back and look at the messages.
Uh, yeah, man. Well, you're one of my favorite guests, man. I always appreciate the conversations we have, man. I think you wanted to kind of continue on why you should be an atheist.
Yeah,
Is
yeah.
that where you wanted to start? I guess can you help clarify? Because I think last time we were focused on specifically why you, Liam, should be an atheist, which are unique reasons to you, specific to you, in which they would vary per person. And so maybe that's not where you were getting at.
Yeah, I
But
was
can
more
you,
like, well, I mean, look, fair enough. I would be more like, what are the reasons for atheism? Because I know that in some of our correspondence, you did say, um, in Triple A, we were just like in touch afterwards, and you were just saying that like the reasons to be an atheist are going to vary from person to person, depending on which God they believe in.
Mhm.
You know? And I was more looking for like because no, I don't think you meant it this way, but it actually sounded to me as if you were saying that there's no objective reason to be an atheist.
I
You
would
know?
say there's no objective reason to be anything. If we're going to talk about objectivity right here, because like we're talking about like whether like we're talking about a state of mind, somebody convinced or not convinced of something, and so that's going to necessarily be subjective.
So do
You
you
know,
think? Look, I mean, um, I hear what you're saying because I mean, obviously, we all bring our own stuff to whatever we're talking about. But you don't think that there's an objective reason to be atheist. There's never an objective reason.
or anything else. There's no objective reason to believe in Santa Claus. There's no objective reason to be Christian. There's no objective reason to be a monalist or a
Is it,
antinatalist. Like if you can put anything there, it's not. This isn't like
so
some weakness in atheism here.
so you're saying there's no objective reason to believe that the Earth is a sphere. There's no objective reason to believe that the Earth is a sphere, or that the sun causes photosynthesis, or
There's no objective reason. So let's be very clear about the terms here. Okay, so when I say objective, I mean mind dependent, mind independent. Subjective meaning mind dependent. So when we talk about somebody being convinced of something, that's going to be necessarily subjective. It's about what convinces you. And so there's some information that could be convincing to you because of knowledge that you may or may not already have. Like for instance, like uh last weekend I was having a conversation with somebody about the Big Bang, and they were looking for evidence for the Big Bang. Right now, I told them CMBR, and they didn't know what I was talking about. If Facade had asked me that and I said CMBR, he knows exactly what that is. There you go. That would have been sufficient evidence. There'd be nothing else to talk about. There you go. Right. But that's because he knows what those things are. Somebody else may not. And those words might mean anything else, mean anything to him. And so it's going to require far further explanation, further analysis. So that's going to be subjective based on the person, based on who you're talking to. On Tangelo. Hey, what's going on, man? You should email us and come on the show. But yeah, so that's what I was saying. It's subjective.
okay, because I'm just okay. It's an interesting take. Look, I understand what you're saying. I mean, like, no fact can't be disputed. I mean, that's why we have flat earthers and all of those things. No matter what the evidence says or whatever it might be, people are still going to not necessarily be convinced by the facts and all of those things. But I guess I'm coming from the point of view that I say I believe that it's objectively true that the Earth is a sphere or spherical. I mean, if you're going to give a nitpick,
yeah, you can say it's objectively true that the Earth is a sphere, but when you say an objective reason why somebody should believe something, that's totally different.
Okay, no, interesting. Because but now are there? Okay, look, I mean, and now I think I'm assuming. Sorry, I didn't. If I, I'm assuming that I'm not talking to any flat earthers
Okay.
in this three-way discussion here. But so we agree that the world is objective. Well, the planet is objectively spherical. But but you're saying, yeah, but whatever the objective reality is, that doesn't mean that someone will agree with that objective reality or believe that objective reality, and that's because of subjective reason.
Yeah, because because we're talking about a state of mind, that's going to necessarily be subjective. Like something can necessarily be true, can objectively be true, but you're not going to have an objective reason to believe it. The reasons why somebody's convinced or is not convinced is going to necessarily be subjective. That's just the way that works, because we're talking about a mind.
Yeah, we're looking at a classic like David Hume problem. This is the is-ought problem. Like we both, I think everyone on the call agrees that the Earth is essentially spheroid, right? No one thinks the Earth is flat. However, there's no reason I ought to believe that. Like, just because things are a certain way doesn't mean that there is an ought behind it, you know? And that's by definition how beliefs work. Like, you believe things based off of evidences and feelings and emotions and a whole bunch of other things that you have, but there's no objective reason outside of your own mind that you would believe them. There's things that your mind have put together. There's things that you perceive and you study and you learn and you feel that have formulated those thoughts. But there's like that is all in your mind, therefore it is completely subjective.
And you don't think that your beliefs have to line up with reality, that there shouldn't be a correlation between what you believe?
Now you're in should.
There's a lot of baggage in there. Like, should your beliefs line up with reality? Okay.
Assuming you want those beliefs to be
true?
So,
right, yeah, that's what I'm saying. There's a lot of baggage you're bringing in here. All right. I want to believe true things. Since I have that goal, if that is my goal, then I should have my beliefs line up with reality, because that's what it would mean to believe true things. That's how I would get the truth. But like there's no objective should. That's going to be relative to the goal. But what I'm saying here is that when we say once you include a mind, you throw out objectivity. You understand? So like if anything that you're convinced of, it depends on you whether or not you're convinced. Two people can listen to the same argument, see the same evidence, and then become to very different conclusions about whether they're convinced.
Yeah. So are there so I'm gonna because you see I was trying to get to but now we could look at the objective evidence for the Earth being a sphere. And now we could disagree that it's objective, but I'm obviously trying to come with the realm of facts and I know, and like you say, this all gets kind of murky and stuff. But I guess I was trying to say is what's the objective evidence that we might just for why one should be atheist? If we take this into account, then the necessary conclusion would be if you know what I'm saying, because it sounded like you're saying is like, no, there's no objective reason, there's no objective facts for why we should be. And again, I mean, like,
no. So I didn't say there aren't objective facts, right? So the facts are going to be objective. what I'm saying, there's no objective reason why somebody should be convinced of something. Anything that convinces a person, like what those reasons are going to necessarily be subjective, because it's contingent upon a mind, right? If it was objective, everybody could see the same thing and would be convinced, right? But that's not how things work, right? People can listen to a debate and come to very different conclusions about who won. We see that stuff all the time. We see that stuff on our channel.
Yeah.
So that's what I mean by it's subjective. Now, when we're talking about
bias, confirmation bias, all of you know what I mean, like you were saying. But I guess because I come from the point of view, and I mean, I know you've even like conceded and said even if the resurrection happened, it doesn't mean that Christianity is true, which obviously I'm like, no, but I disagree with that. But like, because I see, I guess in my mind, it's a sort of like, if the resurrection happened, then Christianity is true. I know that's like what we kind of stake it on. I'm thinking 1 Corinthians 15, and then you might still say, no, look,
that's based on a big fat assumption that Jesus rose from the dead because he's God. And a bunch of other things that come after that, like he's the only God and he has the power to forgive sins and all the other stuff. Like there's a pile of stuff. You need way more than just the resurrection for the gospel.
I guess. Look, I guess I'm also saying, like, from an historical inquiry, I think you should arrive at the conclusion that Jesus did rise from the dead. And I mean, look, we can maybe do that on another show.
Sure.
But I'm also like, if I see no real historical reasons to like chuck out the accounts that we have about the life of Jesus when comparing it to other things. But I'm sort of like this, we were talking about daylight savings time and Benjamin Franklin and stuff. And it's like, now someone might say, no, I don't believe daylight savings times happened or whatever. I don't know. It's a ridiculous, example. But if we look at the historical facts, one has to conclude that daylight savings time came about for these causes and reasons and all of that stuff. And now subjectively, I might not agree with that, but the facts would kind of still stand. And I know, as I said, there's no indisputable fact, because that's why we still have people like flat earthers and people who, vaccine deniers. I mean, actually, saying that with the proliferation of the internet, that's actually been an increase in all of these weird, you know what I mean? But I guess I'm trying to get to, if we look at the facts that of when daylight savings times happened, the facts of even if people are going to dispute those facts, but like, what are the facts that we should take into account that you believe? And I mean, look, I'm using it now.
You're talking about for atheism.
Yeah.
Like, facts. Okay, so that is going to be, and this kind of goes to our conversation last time, right? So that's going to be based on the person, right? So what might convince you to be an atheist is going to be very different for what might convince a pagan to be an atheist, right? So let's like a Roman pagan or pagans like Northern Ireland, right, who believed in multiple different gods. For you, if you only believe in one God, I will only need to disprove Jesus. You'd be an atheist. Boom. For a pagan who believes in multiple gods, I would have to disprove each of those. And then that'd be a reason for them to be an atheist. You see why it's subjective? And then even in those reasons that I give you, you may or may not be convinced. Like one of the examples that we tried to give you last time, and because we usually don't go around trying to disprove gods because it's just a really hard thing to do, right? But the Christian God, fortunately for us, it's kind of easy because he has properties that run into contradictions. So like for instance, the what's it called? The hypostatic union, the belief that Jesus is 100% man and 100% God. And this belief doesn't even apply to all Christians. And Christians who believe in a hypostatic union have different understandings about the hypostatic union. Sometimes they think that Jesus is man and then sometimes God, and he kind of morphs in between, or he's 50-50. But for those that accept that Jesus is 100% in both, that is a logical contradiction. That violates identity. So depending on your specific belief, like that's why I was saying it is subjective.
Because okay, look, I mean, obviously, I don't want to rehash that whole thing, and it would better to say truly God and truly man. But I guess I was just trying to get to like, if you disprove the Christian God, that doesn't then make me atheist. That just means that maybe I shouldn't be Christian.
Well, here's the thing. So, like, if you already don't believe in any other gods, if you remove Jesus, then you're without a God belief. Then you would be an atheist. If for you, if we remove Jesus and then you just instantly filled in with something else, with another God, well, that like now that's going to be impossible, right? Because like there's the Old Testament God, there is no way you could disprove him. You'd have to be everywhere throughout space and time to disprove him. Like he's all powerful, right? That means he's capable of hiding himself from me. How could I disprove that? How could I disprove that there is not some alien hiding under a rock somewhere in the Andromeda galaxy? I have no ability to investigate that. Ask yourself, how could I disprove that there's not a God doing the same thing, hiding himself under a rock in the Andromeda galaxy? I couldn't possibly disprove that, because I can't investigate all of these places. Even if I could, I also couldn't investigate that there never was a God, or that there won't be one in the future. So disproving an omnipotent creature is a pretty, I mean, I think it's a fool's errand. That's why, like, atheists, when we call ourselves atheists, we're just saying non-theists. We're just not convinced that there is a God. That's not the positive assertion that there aren't any.
Okay, so you're following what's his name Flew on that, which I thought was
I'm not following anyone. Like, I'm just telling you what I mean when I say the word atheist.
Yeah,
And
no,
that is if you just look at the literal meaning of the word, a non-theist, right? Theist, one who believes in God. Non, or a, right?
Yeah,
Atheist. This is the literal meaning of the word.
Yeah, and look, I think just looking into that a little bit, I mean, it seemed to have been more of a rhetorical move, because, like you said, it got to the place where you can't not prove that there's a God. You can't prove that there's no God.
So it's not a rhetorical move; it's intellectual honesty. Because I'm telling you, I cannot debunk the Christian God or any sort of omnipotent God. So I'm just telling you, I can't do that. I'm not making the argument easier for myself. I am honestly articulating my beliefs.
And so the reasons that you don't believe in any God are?
That's for the same reasons I don't believe in Santa Claus or leprechauns. I don't have any evidence of them.
Okay, and what would you count as evidence? So you can't make a positive argument for atheism. You can only have to sit around debunking what other people believe about their gods. And then, like you said, that would be a bit of a fool's errand.
Yeah, so atheism doesn't require a positive argument. It's like you're born and you become conscious. You're just without the belief. You're gonna have to be convinced of those things first. So like that's just the way it works.
Look, I mean, and obviously, like, talking to atheists, I mean, again, this has been a phenomenon. It was since about Anthony Flew, who did make the move from atheism. Used to be like, no, I believe that there is no God. That used to be what atheism was, and now it's a matter of no, I have no belief that there's a God. If I'm going to be, as you said, intellectually honest and stuff.
I don't know who Anthony Flew is, actually. You said a name a few times. Yeah, that name means nothing to me.
he was the most famous atheist philosopher from last century. I think he died either late 90s or early 2000s. After, by the way, to theism, not a like we have no evidence he became a Christian. Evidence, talking about evidence again.
Mhm.
But he did agree that no, there must be a God when he looked at the complexity of the cell. That was where he arrived after being one of the most famous. All of these things. That's where
complexity is a relative term, and then he has to explain why complexity requires a God. That's going to require an argument. So,
but I'm just saying. But that move from no, I believe that there's no God, and then that would require reasons. To I have the belief that there's a God, which now is like, so I don't require any reasons. Anyway, that if from what I can tell, that traces back to flu. That was a bit of a move that happened because you couldn't make atheism can't make positive arguments. Okay, so
we're talking about evidence.
I'm just trying to think because yes, facade.
I like to go into the evidence thing that you had said, because you had said like when I said like I don't believe in God because I don't have any evidence. Yes, what counted as evidence? Did you want to go there?
I do. I'm just trying to think. I'm still just surprised, I guess, because here's the thing with that whole like line of reasoning. If someone said, "Look, I don't believe in Finland. I have no belief that Finland exists." You're going to want to know. Look, you got to have a pretty good reason for that. Like, I need to hear some argument.
Yeah, not having any evidence of Finland is a really good reason to not believe in Finland.
But now you're going to have to, yeah.
On the floor beside me, beside my right shoe, there's an entire galaxy. It's the size of a marble. Why don't you believe me?
Probably because I feel like you're trying to take the mickey out of the, unless it's just probably for illustrative purposes, hey?
Yeah. I mean, like, you see, like, I'm giving you something that's miraculous and unconclusive and unprovable. You haven't seen it. You haven't experienced it in any way. But I tell you with certainty, I believe it's there. And I say that I have my own evidences for it by the fact that I can see it and observe it, and I felt its presence, and a whole bunch of other things. But I want you to believe it. Why don't you believe me?
Why don't I believe that there's an
entire galaxy that's the size of a marble that's on the floor beside my right shoe?
Well, I guess for me, I don't believe that you believe it, Facade. I think you're using it to illustrate how you think.
Why not?
Two atheists talking to a Christian.
Well, what does it have to do? I have not mentioned a God in anything I just said. The only thing you know about my beliefs is that I don't attest to your position on a God. That means nothing about my version of cosmology. Nor does it indicate that I'm sane or that I have any cognizance of anything else that's going on. I could be off the wall crazy and believe that, Santa Claus himself is my father, and you'd have no idea of knowing from the conversations that we've had. So I'm telling you, that on the floor beside my right foot, there's a galaxy. It's the size of a marble. And I can observe it, and I can feel the effects of this galaxy. And I want you to believe me. Why don't you believe me?
Context of conversation. I think you're just saying that to try and draw a false analogy between my beliefs in God and your belief in the galaxy, which you don't really believe is there.
So are you only saying you believe in God because the context of this conversation is that you're on a show with Atheist?
No, I'm just saying the reason I don't believe in the galaxy by your foot is because I think in the context of a conversation, you're using it as an example to show me that you find the idea of God ridiculous.
Okay, so I think the only reason that you're positing a God is because you're on a show talking to atheists and you wouldn't believe one without it.
How about this, Liam? So do you believe in the Big Bang?
I do overall.
Okay.
No, look, I think
I'm just trying to find something that he actually believes.
Yeah. No, look, I believe it. I think the Big Bang is probably, it's the summary of what we have observed and found, and it's the label that I know that like there's maybe a problem with the label of it and so forth. But yeah, I do believe that the universe had a beginning. I think that the scientific investigation leads to what we refer to as the Big Bang.
Gotcha. That's fine. Okay, let's say that he actually believes that there's a galaxy that the size of a ball, like nearest foot. Let's say he actually. Why wouldn't you believe that?
Well, I would believe. I guess I could get to the place where I believe that he believes it. Hey, Facade.
Yeah, but So let's say you believe that he believes it, right? And Facade, you're believing that right now, right?
I believe it 100%.
Okay, now why don't you believe it with him?
Because let's see, what are you giving me? It's what were the reasons that you believe in it, Facade?
Oh, I've experienced it. I mean, I've seen its presence. I've felt the effects of this galaxy. There are things that are in my life that I can attribute to this galaxy's existence.
Such as?
The way that my room sits now. I'm reminded of things that happen day to day because the galaxy exists. I'm inspired by the galaxy. It draws me in and it makes me contemplate things like life and it wants me to be a better person because I recognize how fragile life is and how vast the universe is for me to be able to observe a galaxy the size of a marble in my own room.
I'm not, but if I may move, look, I don't believe in that because I guess I would need to see it, or you'd have to actually give me a bit more evidence than just that it makes me feel a certain way. Now, if we're going to draw like the analogy between that and God, are you saying, are those the only arguments that have been mustered on your show or in your reading, that it's because people feel God? Is that?
No. I'm just giving you reasons why I believe in this galaxy.
Like you asked for reasons, and he was just making them up on the fly for the
No, I know. Facade, better than me. One thing I've learned coming on your show is that my brain doesn't have the elasticity or nimbleness that I would have hoped it had on like the spot.
So
you know what I mean?
What could I do to convince you that there's a galaxy beside me on the floor?
If it's the size of a marble, I guess I'd say, can you move the camera to show it to me?
I could move the camera, but I can't show it to you because I'm the only one that can see it.
Okay, so now it's now again, I'm just trying to extrapolate from this example because obviously we're talking about belief in God and stuff. Have people honestly only given you those reasons that they feel God and the idea?
Again, we're taking one on at a time, buddy. We're just taking one on at a time. I mean, I could give you a laundry list of reasons why individuals have stated they believe in God. I've had someone tell me that they believe in God because their sister was a heroin addict, and the only way that they could have recovered from being a heroin addict was because God. Now, that's a pretty nuanced thing. I'm not going to tell you that my galaxy has ever helped anyone's sister recover from being a heroin addict. That's not something I'm going to tell you about my galaxy, because I can't tell you that for sure. Now, each person is convinced of their own reasons, right? For their own personal reasons as to why they believe in a God. I'm asking you, what can I do to convince you of this galaxy?
I guess in this one, because of the description given, are you able to lift up the galaxy, or is it?
Of course not. It's a galaxy.
I feel like I'm here to discuss. I was hoping to hear reasons to be an atheist, and you're saying the fact that you can't show me a galaxy and can give me only the personal experience of it.
No, I'm asking you to believe it with me.
But now, if I'm trying to get back onto like the track here,
ignore that. I just want you to have a real conversation for a moment. I'm genuinely trying to convince you this galaxy exists. I'm asking you for evidence that would help you believe it. Let's ignore the God. Let's sidetrack the God thing for just a minute. Let's pretend I don't give two craps about you and your God, and you don't give a crap about me and my lack of God. Let's forget that this is a show about talking about God for a moment. I'm asking you genuinely for just a minute. Let's have a conversation about this galaxy. How could I convince you this galaxy's real?
Just one-on-one, you and me.
Yeah, you and me
But
right now. How would I do? You asked me earlier for like how would you convince me that your God exists? Like what evidence would I accept? What evidence would you accept from me to prove that this galaxy exists?
I guess if maybe the majority of humanity also believed in the galaxy by your foot, might be something to make me say, wait, hold on, why do people believe that? What is
Hey,
convincing?
AAA. Hey,
Mhm.
there's a galaxy beside my foot. Can you believe me?
Yes.
Now, there's two people on this show that have a belief in this galaxy, right? And that's the majority of the people on this conversation. So now you're in a minority of people that don't believe in the galaxy. Does that make you convinced?
No, that was the fallacious appeal to majority and stuff. But
Okay,
I guess
so what can you give me?
That's what you asked for. That's the only reason you did that.
I'm just trying to think because, like,
Yeah, exactly,
Obviously-
right? Like, it's hard to say what's going to convince you of this galaxy, right? Because you don't know. You don't know what I would have to do to prove to you that this galaxy's real. You can think about it. I'll give you all the time you want.
and I guess again it would be a matter of, because when I start saying plausible arguments, all of these things,
Sure.
yeah,
I mean, anything you want. Literally, you can have all the time and any argument you want to give me a solid piece of evidence you'd accept for me to prove to you or to help you believe that this galaxy's real.
historical arguments. It was seen. It was all like, I don't know. I guess scientific arguments, historical scientific arguments, philosophical arguments. They go beyond
like,
just saying that
historically, galaxies have existed for billions of years.
yeah, because I guess
Okay.
we're
So I mean, like we've established historically, galaxies do exist. That's you believe in galaxies, right?
not marble-sized galaxies though. This would be the
But you
first
do
time
believe galaxies can exist. You're just not a fan of the marble size, right? We can get to that later. But okay, so scientifically, galaxies exist. That's a step in the right direction. Historically, galaxies have existed for as long as humanity, at least. So I'd say historically, good case for galaxies existing again. Philosophically, I mean, Rene Descartes said it best himself. I think, therefore I am. If he is and he exists in part of the universe that we currently exist in, and cosmologically, we live in a galaxy. Again, another check mark towards galaxies existing. So I've given you a historic and a scientific and a philosophical reason galaxies exist. Yeah. So I've given you a lot for reason for galaxies.
For galaxies as historically understood to be something that we live in are much bigger than
I wager that most of humanity believes in galaxies.
For marble-sized galaxies, I'm just saying.
Sure.
Okay.
I mean, you see what I'm saying? Like, I've given you arguments of each kind, but you still seem unconvinced.
Yeah, because I know it was an ad hoc scenario that you concocted very well, much more lucidly than I could have come up with something on the ad hoc fly. So this has what to do with God not existing?
Well, I mean, my question is, why don't you just automatically believe it? Why don't you just assume that it's true?
I guess because I consider myself not to be gullible.
Well, I mean, like, there's nothing gullible about galaxies existing or believing someone claims something.
And he also gave you evidence. He told you it's by his foot, and he experienced it.
Yeah.
Again, that's like evidence for
in
why
fact,
you
I've
might.
given you other people that believe in it.
That's why I think it might have been helpful to discuss like what evidence actually is.
Okay, go ahead. Let me know.
So evidence. If you had it, this is a good way to recognize it. If you had it, right? Evidence would be something. Here's let me break it down. If the belief is true, there should be things about reality that you'd be able to predict based off this truth. So for instance, like general relativity, right? It was a new way about how gravity worked. It involved the curvature of space-time, right? And Einstein knew that if his theory is true, if mass tells space how to bend, then around massive objects, you should see more curvature. For us, and we know light travels in a straight line, so the space that light is traveling through should be bending. And so we looked out and saw that thing, and that's exactly what he saw. He was able to make a prediction because of his sense. If he knew his thing is true, if he knew this belief is true, there's going to be predictions about reality. He'd go out and see and test those predictions, and they're true, right? He saw exactly what he expected to see. If the Big Bang is true, then you should see something like CMBR. You look out in space, and that's exactly what you see. So, like, if your belief is true, you should be able to tell me something about reality that I wouldn't otherwise know. And from my standing, there's no prediction that I've seen any God believer make that I couldn't also make.
Okay. And how does that definition of proof or evidence?
Well, that's what the evidence would be. Like, so the evidence would be in the prediction, right? So, like, Einstein believed in. Go ahead.
Like, I was just saying, like, because obviously historical evidence wouldn't be able to conform to that. Historical evidence doesn't necessarily lead to future predictive properties.
What do you mean? What do you mean by historical evidence? Like, so if I say that, for instance, let's say I say that my father, well, I say that my great grandfather, who's dead now, served in the army. I should be able to find records of that. He should have, like some document somewhere, showing that he served. Maybe a picture of him in uniform. If I'm able to find those things, that's evidence of it.
What I'm talking about now, look, is there a difference between? I mean, this gets into it because I use obvious evidence pretty generally. Like, there's some way to see whether or not this thing is true. And I mean, look, obviously
that's the way you would see it's true, by making a prediction. You want to know, do you have orange juice in your refrigerator? A prediction you'd make is, if I go in the refrigerator, opened it, will I see orange juice? If you see orange juice, then yes, it's true you have orange juice in your refrigerator.
But again, like, and then because that seemed to be the definition of scientific evidence that you were giving there. We can make predictions here that actually.
It doesn't have to be scientific. Okay. Whatever, if you're telling me something that's true, then there should be something about reality that is revealing to you that is closed off to everyone else.
Now, you see, now, just clarify. So there's evidence for me that no one else can see.
No. So like
I said, like I said, I think I just want to process, because you were saying it closed off to everyone else. What did you mean by that? I don't think that's what I heard. So that's what I'm asking.
Yeah. So let's say you believe A is true. If your assertion about A is actually true, then there should be things about reality that you could predict based off of A that other people who don't believe in A would not be able to predict. For instance, if you didn't believe in general relativity, there is no reason for you to think that light would curve around massive objects. That would be silly.
And can you give me like look? I'm not disagreeing with the definition here, but I was
you
trying
have
to see
practice it. Just give me the example. What are you asking for?
No, as I said, so no, scientifically 100%, and historically, you say that we should be able to find records of.
Let's give you the example.
It doesn't have to be.
Let's do it with history, just the way you did with the orange juice thing. My grandfather, I'll tell you this claim. My grandfather served in the military on my father's side. Okay? I'm making this claim. If I were to go and search for or try to provide you evidence for this, I could go to Washington, D.C., to the Wall of Veterans, and I could show you my grandfather's name on that wall.
Yeah. So
I can make a prediction about modern reality that would prove to you that my dead grandfather was indeed in the military.
Yeah.
I could show you pictures of my dead grandfather in military uniform.
We could
I
go to
could
the
show you
VA
his-
archives, pull his DD-214.
Yep. I could give you his dog tags.
Yeah. And I'm trying to think. It's just interesting because apparently my grandparents on my mother's side met 2 blocks from where they lived until he died in like 2005, 2006. I actually found recently I had the wrong date. Like, you know how you placing it and then you're actually talking to family like, oh my gosh, I thought it was 2004, but actually it's been 2005 or 2006. But in a sense, I can provide no evidence that that's where my grandparents met because it wasn't something that was on record. It's obviously I heard it from him.
So it doesn't have to be on record, but let's be very clear. So let's say their proposition A is true and there's no evidence of it.
Yeah.
Something can be true without you having any evidence of it. However, it would not be rational for you to believe if you don't have any evidence. For instance, prior to the advent of general relativity, let's take 4,000 years ago when they were building the pyramids, it would be irrational to think that space-time, the space-time bends around massive objects. That would be irrational to believe. Once you're presented with the evidence of such, it is now rational to believe.
Strangely enough, that's also why. Okay. Anyway, no. Let me. I was just gonna mention, which again I've read up on, but I don't have enough of a grasp of it. But that's actually the reason that people had like with Copernicus, and then saying that the Earth revolved around the sun.
That's a great example, right? Because it is very hard to go ahead. Gosh, let me cut you off.
Again, at the time, all the scientific evidence kind of pointed away from the fact that we did orbit the sun, just from their observations at the time. You know, I mean, it took hundreds of years before the evidence kind of caught up with the fact of it.
So not really. Because here's the thing, right? Because they were just basing it off their observations. Now, and whether the Earth revolved around the sun or the sun revolved around the Earth, it would look identical to us. We're going to see the Earth's rising in the morning and setting in the evening. You're not going to be able to tell a difference. But here's what Copernicus was able to do. He could say, because of this model, I know where this planet is going to be at this specific date. He's able to make predictions about the sky based off of his model. Because he was like, when you put the Earth in the center, the sky doesn't make any sense. This planet should be over here. And he just switched them and bam. And guess what? And then he changed it. They're not perfect circles. They're ellipticals. And then the predictions got even more precise. Because before then, he could say the star's going to be somewhere within here. Now we're able to narrow it down by saying it's an elliptical.
My point is about the evidence there is that it like the same reason with general relativity, there were predictions they could make and everything, but it took a while for the scientific community to embrace it because it had to be verified. You know what I mean? It took time for it was in time. Like, I mean, at the moment, and it wasn't exactly irrational to believe what Einstein was saying from the get-go because he had the mathematical proofs.
No, that's not true. That's not true. Right? You can have mathematical proofs of a bunch of different things. The math predicts the tachyon, right? Remember that particle that exceeds the speed of light? That thing doesn't exist, right? So you're not like basing it off of math.
Okay.
But
go ahead. Let me read. No. I hear what you're saying. It's just I'm just saying that evidence sometimes, like in the scientific community, it can take time for it to come on because.
Well, yes, because so. It took time in the scientific community because they didn't all see it at the same time, right? Let's say me and Facade, we're both scientists. You come up with general relativity. Yeah. When Facade sees your experiment, I'm not going to be convinced by that because I didn't see that. It'd be totally irrational for me to believe because I didn't see the evidence. But for Facade, he would be rational for believing it. Once that evidence is presented to me, and then I can believe it. And then it trickles down, right? More and more people see it, and then they're convinced by the evidence. and I try to disprove it, saying, oh, you can predict about this other thing. I'm not able to replicate that experiment. Then it shows your theory is the only thing that could actually produce this effect. That is your evidence.
Yeah. You know about the replicability problem in science right now, hey? I'm not anti-science, but you're aware of that. There's like a vast amount of literature. But okay. So I'm not sure where we're going with this.
Well, we were talking about evidence, right? And you talking about like so, and you asked me why I don't believe in God, and I said it for a lack of evidence. Then you asked me what would I say is evidence, and this is what I'm giving you. So you believe in God, if God exists and you believe in Him, there should be predictions that you're able to make, and we can go out and investigate those things to determine if they're true.
And you're saying obviously that you don't see any of that.
There is no prediction I've ever seen anybody make based off the belief of a God.
You know, I hate this. I came across something, and I know that this is, again, that still strike. Okay, so like you were then trying to tie up the historical evidence means we would have some evidence that is still available.
It would work the same way. Like you could predict something in history with evidence. The facade example he gave. You talking about his great grandfather serving in the army. You could
Like you're still able to make predictions with these claims,
right?
Like if my grandfather did indeed serve in the military, you'd be today, given the vast array of military records, you could pull his military service record, and you could that would help validate my claim. Right, that was good evidence that my granddad served in the army.
The Megalodon, right? Where I believe that the Megalodon lived and is now in the Grand Canyon, and you can go in and dig. Like if my prediction is true, you should find Megalodon teeth in there. You should find fossils of fish with Megalodon teeth in them. That's exactly what we find.
Right. Strange enough, in South Africa is it Ushaka Marine World? We have a plastic thing of a megalodon, like so you can take a photo inside the mouth of it. Just strange that you bring it up. But now what? And then just to be clear, you're saying we don't have any evidence for atheism because that's not what atheism would produce or does or can.
Because atheism is not a belief. Is a lack of belief. So that's what I'm saying. So what we gave you was belief. If your belief is true, then you should be able to make predictions off of something. If I'm saying I don't believe something, just what predictions could I make off of not believing in it? I mean, like it's not a thing. There's nothing that exists that I could make predictions from.
So you can't make a positive argument for atheism. You can't say if I look at this, and this, that means that atheism. And I mean, the other thing that you would probably
remember it. So atheism is just the non-acceptance of a proposition. The proposition, if you accept it, there should be predictions that you make from it.
Yeah, because now we're talking about obviously burden of proof and all of that. Long way around, I guess. But that's what
burden of proof would an atheist have?
Because I guess I would like to, if atheism would posit that there's obviously no God and there's no cause of the universe.
No, so I would that was wrong. So atheism says nothing at all about the cause of the universe. And then they're not positing. So there are some atheists that will posit that there are no gods, but that is not required for atheism. It's just not believing in gods. You don't have to say that there aren't any.
What I'm trying to say is, like, look, belief or non-belief kind of has some ramifications, because obviously if you believe in a godless universe, because you have no belief that there's a God anywhere, etc., and you can't prove it. But there's some ramifications. That would mean that there would have to be a causeless universe, an uncaused universe.
No.
From a theist,
that would just mean that a God couldn't be the cause if you believe that there were no gods. You're making a false dichotomy there. A, we don't claim there are no gods. I don't, at least. Neither does AAA. But B, you're making a false dichotomy. Either God caused the universe, or
Nothing.
Nothing caused the universe.
Right.
A
A
demigod,
leprechaun could
a
fart.
leprechaun, a sufficiently powerful wizard, a blip in a like some interdimensional pathway of energy crossings could be the cause of our universe, and that would say nothing about atheism.
Because atheism has no ramifications.
We didn't say they have any ramifications.
We're saying you say a god did it. I say I don't believe you. Now what?
And then I say, okay, so what evidence do you have for a godless universe coming into existence? Or,
I would say that the universe exists, and I don't have good evidence that a god did it. Your turn.
Yeah, no, but again,
you're also assuming that the universe came into existence. I'm not convinced of that.
Yeah, me either, honestly.
But you do believe in the Big Bang.
Yeah.
Okay. Now again,
that's not the beginning of the universe. That so beyond the Big Bang. So gravity. We understand. Yeah. Okay. I'm not gonna go all into the technical, understanding of it. But here's the. Can I just a synopsis? Gravity plays a role in the and 13.8 billion years ago, gravity was doing something. We don't know what it was. So the model stops working. We know what the other things were doing. We know what the strong and weak interaction was doing. We know what electromagnetic magnetism was doing. We don't know what gravity was doing. So the model just stops working. That's where the Big Bang stops. That's not a beginning. That's a limitation in the theory.
Mathematics currently.
Yeah.
Yeah. Again, okay, but then just trying to get on here because now so you're saying that atheism has no ramifications. It doesn't.
That's not. That's not what he didn't say.
That's a different claim altogether.
Yeah. Then because look, just again, sorry guys. You remember, like I also bring all my baggage of interaction with atheists, and it's been refreshing. Often, like the approach that we've had here. You know what I mean? Like different takes on it. But
question is celibacy a sex position?
If I may,
hold on. Can you just answer my question? This will help. I don't mean to get X-rated here, but is celibacy a sex position?
Celibacy.
No, but no. Obviously, celibacy isn't a sex position.
Right. Right.
Color.
Okay. So, in the same manner, celibacy isn't a sex position. Starvation is not a type of food. Like a sedentary lifestyle isn't a type of exercise, right? Atheism is not a belief. It's the absence of those things. Celibacy is the act of not having sex. So it's not a position, right? Atheism is the act of not believing in God. That's it. The only way to be a bad atheist is to believe in God. You can believe in anything else. You believe it or not, you can be a young earth creationist and be an atheist. Long as you don't think a God did it. You can believe a leprechaun farted 6 days in a row and made the earth. And then it's 6,000 years old and there was a flood and Noah and everything. You can believe in all other shit. Long as you don't think it's a God, you're an atheist.
By the way, that's a bit of a segue to the joke I mentioned, because bald isn't a hair color. No, bald isn't a hair color. So what my dad used to say is, if you go bald from the front, you're a thinker, and if you go bald from the back, you're sexy, and then eventually you think you're sexy. So anyway, but now I'm just saying, but there's some ramifications. Like if I'm celibate, that means that I'm not having sex. I mean, and you're saying that that's all it is. But I've just shared with guys. I just think that there are ramifications of denying God's existence.
Well, okay, hold on.
I agree.
First of all,
there are ramifications for denying God's existence.
Yes, there are ramifications. Also, atheism isn't simply the denial of God either.
It's the lack of belief in God.
Yes, and also, even just for the lack of belief, there are ramifications. One of the ramifications is that you don't believe. That's just how it follows.
And if there are consequences for not believing in that thing, then you will suffer the consequences for not believing in that thing.
Exactly.
For instance, like if I didn't believe there was a bear trying to attack me from behind, and there was a bear trying to attack me from behind, the ramifications are I'm going to be attacked by a bear.
Okay. And I see, guys, we've been chatting for an hour and still have. Okay, so you don't see any evidence for God, and there's no positive arguments for atheism.
But I gave you what that evidence was. Right? Now, just think about this, Liam. Your God is all powerful. The creator of the universe has done created all the things that we see. Is capable of anything, right? Aside from sin. You have access to that God. If that's true, you should be able to tell me stuff about reality that I didn't know. Wouldn't you?
Well, I think it gives us an explanation for why the universe is here.
No, hold on. But that's not enough. Like, so I could just make up an explanation, right? Like I say, like, how does Facade bald? I could say, well, a magical leprechaun ate all his hair. So you could just make up explanations. When I'm saying there should be predictions about reality that you should be able to make tons of them, and we could all go and investigate and find them to be true.
Things that would be unique to God. Like, to go back to your Copernicus example of, like, where we're talking about heliocentric versus geocentric, when the two paths collided and we were talking about geocentric versus a heliocentric model of the universe, right? And of our solar system. Correction. But as we were talking about a heliocentric versus geocentric version of our solar system, when Copernicus made predictions about the planets revolving around the sun, what it did was it corrected the incorrect assumptions we were making in a geocentric solar system. And furthermore, when he proved that posited that they were not only a perfect sphere, but they were ellipses, we were then able to even calculate further, which further matched his model. That doesn't mean that there's not any evidence for a geocentric version of our solar system. It means that we have a better model that's explained in better terms by this new model, heliocentrism. Right? And so what we have is a lot of people that can posit anything they want about the origin of the universe or anything else, right? And you're saying that your God is responsible for a lot of these things. And I'm saying that, like, I can give you examples or evidences, or I can give you my posits on how these things exist without your God. How are we going to determine which of the two models is better? You should be able to do just like Copernicus did and give me examples of things that you can predict that will be true only in an instance in which God is necessary. Or only in an instance, in Copernicus' case, in which the sun was the center of our solar system. That would make your model better than my model.
And I do. I think God does do that. Why does, why do the laws of physics and why does all the scientific explanation actually work? I think it does work. It's better explained on there being a mind behind the universe.
No. So we're not talking about making like post hoc rationalizations, like coming up with explanations of things that we already know. Like for instance, like because we know that the Earth orbits the sun, I know where the stars are going to be, and I can now make up an explanation of why the stars are going to be there. I can say, a magical unicorn put them there. Right. So like making up an explanation for a prediction that somebody else already made is not the evidence. What we're talking about is that there is an event or a thing that you can find and see that nobody else knew was going to be there, but you knew because of your model. Or you can make it even more precise. Just like I said, with Copernicus, he was able to predict where the stars are going to be based off of the Earth orbiting the sun. When we added ellipticals, right, it made the position of the stars from like over here to this, right? It tightened it. We were able to make better predictions. Like the approximation got even more precise.
Just like when we move from the general theory of relativity to the special theory of relativity, we're getting more precise about things that we did not previously know.
I hear you. Sorry, I didn't know. It's always like interesting because when I ask for reasons to be atheist, I mean, it always ends up being a discussion about why my beliefs are wrong, which is the only.
Well, no, we're not talking about your beliefs. Like we're talking about what is evidence.
Like
And
this
so,
is what
and so why?
you.
Believe so when you ask why I'm not a God, I don't I'm an atheist. It's because I don't have any evidence for God. You asked why, what would constitute as evidence? We gave you what that evidence is. Now, all you would have to do is produce it. Now, here, when you have God, which would be like the theory of everything, essentially, there should be nothing that you wouldn't be able to predict. Right? If I had some omniscient being at my disposal, there'd be all kinds of things you'd be able to predict. Like if Facade was omniscient and I have easy access to him, we could just text him back and forth. I could be able to guess like what socks you're wearing, what food you have in your fridge, and I could make all kinds of stuff. Right? I could tell you the names of your children and your wife and all that kind of stuff. You see what I'm saying? There's predictions I'll be able to make if he's actually omniscient.
Yeah, you could literally, if I was truly omniscient, he could make such a bold claim that you could make up a number, a 10-digit random number, and write it down. And I could tell you what that number is, and that would help demonstrate that I am truly omniscient. Because there's no way that I just picked 10 numbers at random. I mean, you know, the odds of that are 1 to the 10 to the nth, you know, or n to the 10th, you know. It literally would just be like, you know, a Google of numbers.
I meant to just okay. My thing isn't working here. Okay, well, guys, I must admit, like, I'm still not hearing reasons that I should be an atheist, but you're like, no, that's
no. So, but Liam, hold on.
The reason you shouldn't be an atheist is the reason you shouldn't believe that there's a galaxy beside my foot.
The reasons why you should be an atheist is because you're Liam, I'm about to give you your reason. The reason you should be an atheist is because you aren't able to make any predictions on your God belief. That's a good reason to be an atheist. But if it was true and you had evidence of it being true, you'd be able to make those predictions. That would be producing the evidence.
But I'm not too sure, like who says that I have to be able to make predictions from God? I mean, if that's not God's will for me to be doing that, but now does that just sound like a sneaky ducking and diving of the point?
No, because no, it's not that because that's how it works with everything else. There is nothing that you could tell me. There is nothing that I would say that I know that I couldn't make predictions of. If you found that thing, I would then say I don't know that. I would say, oh, yes, I don't know that anymore. That is how it works with everything else. So we're not ducking and diving. We're just talking about epistemology here.
I'm asking does that sound like I'm ducking and diving? If I'm saying I believe, obviously, like the God of the universe is not there just to make predictions about what, like the socks that someone is wearing, does that then just sound as if I'm weaseling out of the expectation you have?
Yeah, it sounds like you're avoiding the question because we didn't say what God is just here to do. We're just saying if your God belief is true, here's one thing you'd be able to do. Just like if A is true, here's something you should be. If you have evidence of A, then here's something you should be able to do. Put whatever. A is just a placeholder. Put God there. Put whatever you want.
So, like, I'll give you a really good example here. You know my little marble-sized galaxy that's down here. If it was true, and we know that light bends around dense objects, and a galaxy the size of a marble would be an incredibly dense object, I could show you light bending around things around my foot. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Otherwise, either that's true and light doesn't bend around objects around my foot, meaning there's no incredibly dense object there, or the general theory of relativity is wrong. One or two, right?
Yeah, I know. I was sorry, guys. There's just a problem here with my laptop. I don't know what's going on. I wanted to check anyway. You see, God is not allowing me to Google stuff here that would help me.
Man, see, a real God wouldn't need Google.
Right.
But then why, unless God supplied Google, ultimately, you know?
I mean, if he was a good supplier, you'd be able to use it, right?
Just in this one particular, I was actually getting some stuff ready, but anyway, so
I mean, like the reason I don't believe is because I'm not convinced. You clearly are. The question is, are you convinced for good and rational reason, right? If I tell you the Loch Ness monster exists, and you say no, he doesn't, and then we drained Loch Ness, and there is some giant beast in there that no one's ever seen before, you then have irrefutable evidence that it exists. Right? Like there were just like that would be it. The game over, right?
That's the monster.
That's the monster. Problem solved. Right? But if you say I believe because XYZ, and then I say I'm not convinced by your XYZ, then we're kind of at a standstill. But if you say I'm not convinced of XYZ, and that's the only way this can happen, as I pointed out earlier, you're kind of making a false dichotomy, right? Like either God created the universe, which is what you believe, or that nothing created the universe. Well, you're poisoning the well by using the term created the universe, right? Like by saying the universe was created, you're giving a false dichotomy. You're poisoning the well, and then saying that either God did it or nothing did it. That's a false dichotomy. So like, when most of the time when we're talking, you say like, what reason should I be an atheist? In your specific example, and I thought this was really interesting when he brought it up earlier. If we could disprove that like Jesus was God or that Jesus was real, we said that would make you an atheist. And I think for a lot of that you disagreed. Would you fill in, like, if hypothetically, just real hypothetical, like, let's eradicate the Judeo-Christian God from the existence of your mind for a split second. Do you now believe in a different God?
No, it's not that I now believe in a different God. It's just that I think looking at
would you withhold belief in other gods until you could establish that another God possibly did it?
Yeah. I was trying to maybe just get there. I'm just saying I would probably look for me, considering the evidence of the Big Bang, what we know about the origin of the universe, and I know that there are big gaps in it. I do believe that obviously points towards a mind, powerful mind. The fact that we all agree that it's never okay in any culture, in any situation, to torture a baby for fun. I think that it points to a moral mind behind the universe as well. So I'm just saying, I know, and that's another discussion that we can always revisit at another time. Okay. But I'm just saying, for me, if you disprove, like if you could kind of disprove Jesus, his existence or his resurrection, or at least cast enough doubt that it doesn't like make historical sense, I would still believe that there is a God behind the universe, and I think it would have to be personal because. You know, like an impersonal God, like in most Hindu traditions, wouldn't really care whether we tortured babies or not and all of that stuff. So I'm just saying.
But I mean, how would you know that God cares that you tortured babies or anything like that? Literally, what you're going off of is the Judeo-Christian God again. You're going back to this thing.
You're making assumptions about the God.
Facade, what I'm saying, no, guys. What I'm saying is, and again, this isn't exactly. I mean. Tell me why you're an atheist, Liam. Defend your position. But it's what I'm saying is I take it the fact that like we know that it's wrong to torture a baby for fun everywhere forever. I just said I think that points towards a God that cares that we don't torture babies.
No,
Look,
because me and Facade agree that it's wrong to torture babies, but the reasons we have believe that are very different from yours. As a matter of fact, me and Facade would also agree that your God, based on our morality, is really bad. He's very immoral.
guys, like I said, there would be another conversation. I'm just trying to answer Fasad's question. He said,
Well,
if you showed that I shouldn't believe in the God of Christianity or Judaism, I'm still pretty convinced that there is a God that created the universe, a God that wants us to be good, based on the fact that and for me, whenever like atheists are saying about morality and like, there's a lot of, we believe that this is how we should behave. I actually think that's kind of backhanded, not like evidence, if anything, that God does exist, and a tacit admission that there must be a moral lawgiver somewhere. I know that you guys don't agree with that. I'm just trying to say, for me, it's like you're saying why I should be an atheist, like believe in no God whatsoever, is such a big leap from just saying Christianity is not true, therefore you mustn't believe in any God whatsoever.
Well, like my question is like you go from, and this is where I have a problem with it, right? It would be like saying this, right? Like if I said that, this is going to be a really hard example. I'm just going to it's going to be really random too. But let's pretend I have the only dog that has ever existed. Ever. Okay? And then you came along and killed my dog. Now no dogs exist. I wouldn't assume there's some other dog somewhere that exists in all of time, right? And even if I like had all the like the beliefs and the joys and pleasure that I had with my dog and his being my friend and my pet and my comfort at times, I still, that doesn't make this random other thing come into being. It's weird to me that like someone who believes in this unique personal like Christian God says that like undoubtedly 100% this is the only God and every other God is wrong. No other God could even possibly exist in the whole world unless that God doesn't exist, in which case some other God that created the universe definitely exists. You see why I have a problem with that? Like, isn't that weird?
I can understand. Obviously, for me, I don't think that I'm doing that as much
But
as...
That's exactly what you're doing when I ask you to strike God from the record. And then you're like, okay, well, if the Christian God doesn't exist, some other God definitely exists. And he created the universe. Like, that's a fact. Like, 100%.
So what I'm saying is, look, a lot of the arguments for God's existence don't rely on reference to the Bible or Christianity. I'm just saying, like, a theistic God. Like, a theistic God could exist apart from, but I believe that the only God that's been revealed is the God of the Bible. But if the Bible was proved wrong, I would still be like, but I still believe that there would be a force or a mind or a creative God behind everything.
That's fine that you believe that. That's fine. You can believe whatever you want. But the only way Facade and I are going to believe, and the only way we could rationally believe, is if you were to produce evidence of that. And the evidence is the criteria that we gave you. And that's how evidence will work with literally everything else. The only way you're getting to God is by changing the nature of evidence. You're changing the rules to fit your God. If you're able, not if you're able to make predictions about reality, but if you're able to use your God as an explanation of things we already know. We know the sun is going to rise in the east and set in the west. You can come up with an explanation.
Evolution of the earth, but whatever, it's fine.
Yeah, we can say that the God is doing that. We already see. You're just positing an explanation for something we already see.
Like when you ask why you should be an atheist, we say like, at least my personal stance is that you shouldn't believe things without good reason, right? And if I stripped away your actual God from you, you just automatically assume some other God exists. So like maybe you're not as firmly planted in the soul like existence of your own God, but maybe the possibility of God, and that's pretty unique to you, I think.
No,
well, I mean, like at least as far as Christianity goes. But like when I say like, should I believe that there's a galaxy the size of a marble beside my foot? Well, without good reason, I shouldn't. I should withhold at best. I should deny if there's evidence against, right? But I shouldn't posit that there's something for. So when you ask why should I be an atheist, or like what's the reason that I'm an atheist, or what's the reason you should be an atheist, is because if you're failed to be convinced that any good argument for God exists, or that you've never been posited with a good argument that would make you rationally believe such, you should also be an atheist. You hold this belief that some God exists, and you believe that for your own reasons. If you wanted us to believe that, you'd have to convince us of that. And in order to do that, you'd have to present evidence. And the way we kind of turn this around, the whole question you asked is why should you be an atheist, is the same reason that you shouldn't believe there's a Loch Ness monster, or that you shouldn't believe there's a galaxy the size of a marble beside my foot. Because you don't have good evidence that those things exist. So you shouldn't hold them, because what you're going to do is lead to logical inconsistencies that fail to match reality of the universe. You're going to believe things that are contradictory in nature because you believe all things simultaneously. You believe that there's a galaxy beside my foot, and also there's not. Because you have equal evidence for both, or equal belief in both. So that's why you can't just accept everything on merit. I don't accept your God claim on merit. I want good evidence for it.
Yeah, and look, I obviously think that there's good evidence for God, as I've listed, moral argument, beginning of the universe. And I know none of you guys think that that's...
And none of those are predictions. Those are explanations for things we already have. Like, I could say the reason why everybody thinks murder, torturing babies is wrong is because of leprechauns. That's not, you're not predicting anything. You're giving a post hoc rationalization. Anyone can do that.
No, I think we're actually arguing to the best explanation when we look at those things. But I know
and
that
arguing to the best explanation isn't evidence.
May I ask though? So when you guys, because if I'm not mistaken, please correct me if I'm wrong. I know, Tribulate, I know that you were a Christian. Facade, you were also a Christian. And I think because I was watching
20 plus years.
I was listening to your Tribulate. I think I was listening to your what is it? Your deconversion testimony. On that, like you shared that link with
with Fanatic.
Yeah. Crud, how long ago was that? That was like anyway,
a year ago.
We're in April now. We're in like freaking April now. So you're saying that Facade, so for 20 plus years you never had a good reason to believe in God. And you just...
I would say, looking back, I didn't have good reason to believe in God, correct?
Nor did I. I had a really bad epistemology as a Christian.
Yeah, same. I had really bad reasons, most of those being the environment I was raised in and the expectations and pressure of the community and family members I was surrounded by, the hope, and I would even go as far to say the fear that I was going to be punished for something eternally in the future. These were all reasons I was a believer at the time I was a believer. What was there a good reason to believe that specific God worked, or that was the actual answer or the solution? No. As a matter of fact, when I did my deconversion, I did something a little different than AAA, and I started studying world religion and history of religion. And I started to see these patterns over and over and over again, and these stories that rose up over and over and over again. And I recognized that it's been most of the time, it's been a great storytelling device for people that believed in God or gods to help pass along stories and helpful things to the next generation. Usually by form of oral tradition until the Sumerians came along, and then we got writing. But
I want to interject for a moment. I have to get ready to go really soon. Let's just go ahead and continue the conversation if you can stay longer for that. Yeah, my wife is sick, and so I need to go ahead and send to her. But
yeah, I don't know if we're on this one, hey? So we should do this again. I don't know. This we didn't seem to get anywhere. I'm not saying... I think we're gonna have to push a pause there because it ultimately still seems to say that it's what it's only subjective reasons to be an atheist, but no good reason to be a theist.
All reasons to believe are subjective.
Yes.
Yeah. No, look,
God.
hope your wife feels better soon. I guess we can call it there, Facade. Hey, Facade, there was no
Well-
shouting match this time. Isn't that amazing?
I tried.
There must be, that's evidence of God.
Evidence
tell
of development.
Just I can make just as many predictions about atheism just as you can make about God. You agree with that?
No.
Okay, well, next time we bring you on, you can present your predictions. All right, so it'll be a few months before you're ready to come back on again.
I don't know, guys. Look, let's chat. I mean, because I still don't. What anyway? Let me read into like what predictions like atheists are expecting God to make, and then yeah, cool. Okay, but blessings. Good to see you again. Really hope your wife is better soon. Have a good one.
I
Hey,
appreciate it,
guys.
man.